There is a woman who does not wait for permission to awaken. She who rises is not forged in comfort, but in the sacred fire of her own unraveling. Her ascent is not a linear climb, it is a spiral into herself, an unearthing of all that was once buried beneath shame, silence, and fear. She who rises does not begin her journey in triumph. Her awakening is not born in sunlight, but in shadow. Before she ever knew the taste of liberation, she knew the weight of silence. Before she rose, she fell, hard, deep, and without a map. This descent was not her failure, it was her initiation. It was the moment life stripped away every illusion she clung to, every borrowed identity that no longer fit. She did not descend because she was weak, but because the soul does not rise until it has roots in truth. And truth is not found in the noise of applause. It is found in the stillness of your own undoing. In the depth of her darkness, she did not find monsters. She found parts of herself she had abandoned, her rage, her grief, her hunger, her longing. These were not enemies. They were orphans at the door of her heart, asking to be let in, and so she sat with them. She gave them names. She gave them space. She gave herself permission to feel what generations before her were never allowed to feel. The world taught her to hide, to numb, to pretend. But the descent demanded something truer, vulnerability without disguise, grief without apology. It was in that sacred breakdown, in the utter falling apart of who she thought she had to be, that she began to remember who she truly was, not the version polished for approval, but the raw, untamed essence that had been waiting beneath the surface all along. This descent was not punishment, it was revelation. It showed her what was real and what was illusion, what was inherited and what was hers, what needed to be mourned and what was ready to be born. No one saw her in that descent, not truly, because when a woman breaks open, the world often looks away. But she did not need them to witness her. She needed to witness herself. She had to touch the bottom of her own soul to realize she was never broken, only buried. That is why she rises, not because she avoided the pain, but because she faced it fully and let it shape her into something unshakable. The descent was the doorway, and she, with trembling hands and fierce heart, walked through it. She who rises does not simply evolve. She remembers. She remembers the self she was before the world told her who to be. Not in a nostalgic way, but in a soul-awakening way. The journey upward is not an act of becoming someone new. It is the sacred process of returning to someone ancient, someone original, someone untouched by conditioning. She remembers the voice she silenced to be liked, the dreams she tucked away to be safe, the wild intuition she was told was irrational. She remembers not with her mind but with her body, with the trembling of her hands, the fire in her chest, the ache in her belly. These are not symptoms of breaking, they are signals of returning. She remembers the girl who danced without shame, who spoke without filters, who questioned what didn't feel right. She remembers the woman inside her who always knew, even when no one else understood. That woman never left. She was simply covered, layer upon layer, by expectations, by fear, by survival. And now, as she rises, she peels those layers back with trembling courage. It is not easy. Every layer removed stings with memory, but also heals with clarity. Each unraveling brings her closer to the pulse of her truth. In remembering, she stops performing. She no longer asks, "Who do they want me to be?" She starts asking, "Who have I always been beneath the noise?" That question changes everything. She begins to hear her own rhythm again, the one that does not match the ticking of clocks or the marching of crowds. She hears the rhythm of the moon in her bones, the pull of the earth in her breath, the quiet knowing that whispers, "You were never lost, only quieted." This remembrance is not loud. It does not demand a stage. It happens in silence, in solitude, in small moments of defiance, when she says no and means it, when she cries and doesn't apologize, when she chooses herself and refuses to explain. It happens when she reclaims her story not as a victim of it, but as the author of it. She no longer needs validation to be herself. The remembering has given her something far deeper, self-recognition. And now she walks with a different posture, not one taught by textbooks or trainers, but by her own soul. It's the posture of someone who knows who she is, not because someone told her, but because she remembered. That memory lives in her eyes, in her breath, in her silence. She does not scream to be seen. She radiates because she has finally come home to the woman she was always meant to be. She who rises does not choose between her light and her dark. She learns to hold both. Her power lies not in being one thing, but in becoming many. She stops dividing herself into categories of acceptable and unacceptable, strong and weak, soft and hard. She begins to understand that her fullness cannot be contained in a single label or a single mood. She is a paradox in motion, tender and fierce, gentle and unyielding, nurturing and unapologetically wild, and it is not confusion, it is wholeness. She was told to pick a side, to be good or rebellious, quiet or bold, emotional or rational. But she knows now that truth lives in the tension between opposites, not in the denial of them. She makes peace with her contradictions. She no longer punishes herself for crying and leading in the same breath. She no longer sees her sensitivity as weakness. She understands it as the doorway to her intuitive knowing. She no longer hides her strength to make others comfortable, nor dims her softness to seem strong. She allows both to live within her, like fire and water, not canceling each other but creating something entirely new. She who rises sees that the parts of herself she once judged were never her enemies. They were her exiled allies. The anger she suppressed was the part of her that demanded justice. The sadness she avoided was the wellspring of her compassion. The fear she denied was a map, showing her where she still needed healing. And so she stops disowning these parts, she brings them in, she listens, she integrates, and in doing so, she becomes indivisible. The marriage of opposites is not clean or easy. It is messy, raw, sometimes uncomfortable. But it is also sacred, because in that merging she finds freedom, not the kind that is granted by the world, but the kind that comes from no longer needing to betray herself. When she no longer fears the chaos within her, she becomes unshakable. She does not chase perfection, she embodies complexity. She walks into the world whole, not because she is flawless, but because she no longer edits herself to fit in. She becomes the bridge between what is and what could be, between the human and the divine, between who she was and who she is becoming. And others may not always understand her. Some will call her too much. Others will call her not enough, but she has learned that those voices no longer matter, because she has heard her own voice, the one that says, I am all of it, and I make no apologies. She is no longer divided against herself. And in that inner union, she rises, radiant, real, and whole. She who rises does not imitate the world, she reimagines it. Her awakening does not come from following the path already carved, but from daring to walk into the wilderness where no map exists. She has lived the life others prescribed for her, and it left her hollow. She wore the roles, mimicked the voices, and tried to fit into the molds that promised acceptance, but none of it felt like truth. And so she stopped. She laid down the script written by others and picked up the pen of her own becoming. She no longer copies what she sees. She creates from what she knows deep in her marrow. To create, she first had to destroy, not in violence but in liberation. She had to unlearn the myths that told her to shrink. She had to break the mirror that showed her only fragments. She had to burn the blueprint of the life that never felt like hers. That fire was not reckless, it was sacred. In its flames, the false identities turned to ash, and something ancient stirred from within. The voice of the originator, not the imitator. The one who knows that real power does not echo, it emanates. She creates not for approval, but from necessity. Creation for her is not a hobby. It is survival, it is breath, it is rebellion. Each word she speaks from her truth is a seed of a new world. Each boundary she sets, each vision she claims, each choice she makes from her own authority becomes an act of defiance against a culture that would rather see her compliant than free. She is not here to decorate the existing structure. She is here to redesign the foundation. Her creativity is not confined to art or poetry. It lives in how she mothers herself, how she reclaims her time, how she loves without losing herself. It is in how she says no, without guilt, how she dares to rest when the world demands production, how she imagines possibilities where others only see limits. She no longer needs to ask, "Is this allowed?" She asks instead, "Is this mine?" If the answer is yes, she creates it. If the answer is no, she walks away without regret. And make no mistake, her creations are not always comfortable for others, because she challenges what is known. She breaks patterns by simply being herself. She becomes a mirror, showing others what they too have buried in their silence. Some will misunderstand her, some will resist her, but those who are ready will recognize her as a force, as a permission, as a memory of what it means to live from within. She who rises creates from the inside out. She does not duplicate the noise, she channels the truth. Her life is not a copy of anyone else's. It is an original song, imperfect, wild, powerful. And every day she lives it, she invites the world not just to witness her, but to awaken within themselves what they have forgotten, the courage to create, to become, to rise. She who rises does not rise in isolation. Though her journey begins in the solitary chambers of her own soul, her transformation sends quiet waves through the hearts of those around her. She does not need to preach or persuade. Her presence alone is a transmission. Not because she is flawless or elevated above others, but because she is real. In a world addicted to masks and performance, her authenticity becomes a mirror that gently, and sometimes uncomfortably, reminds others of what they too carry within. She does not rise for validation. She rises because something inside her refuses to stay asleep. And when she chooses to live from that awakened place, others feel it. They may not have the words for it, but they know. They sense the difference in her eyes, in her energy, in her unwavering boundaries. She no longer conforms to the fear-based patterns that once governed her life, and in doing so, she becomes a silent permission slip for others to do the same. Her healing is not selfish, it is sacred. Every wound she tends, every shadow she integrates, every truth she speaks ripples outward. She is the one who breaks generational patterns not just through her words, but through the choices she makes when no one is watching. She becomes a lighthouse, not because she seeks to lead, but because she cannot help but shine. And when others are lost in their own storms, it is the memory of her resilience, her vulnerability, her fire that reminds them, there is a way back to yourself. She is not here to rescue anyone. She knows the danger of saviorhood. She does not hand out answers. Instead, she asks the kind of questions that awaken the soul. She walks beside others, not above them. And in doing so, she redefines leadership, not as control, but as embodiment, not as authority, but as truthfulness. She shows what it looks like to live without abandoning oneself, and that sight alone becomes medicine for those still trapped in self-betrayal. Even those who resist her feel something shift. Her presence agitates what has long been asleep. She becomes the catalyst, the reflection, the interruption of numbness. And though some will try to dim her, mock her, or reduce her, she continues to rise, not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. Because she knows that every time a woman rises in truth, she sends a signal to the collective. We are allowed to become whole. She who rises becomes the living proof that healing is not only possible, it is powerful. She does not awaken others by demanding they follow her. She awakens them by embodying what it means to follow herself. And in that act of radical self-return, she becomes what the world needs most. Not another imitation, not another hero, but a fully awakened soul, walking boldly in her own skin, calling others, without a single word, to rise too.